It's over there. You're done. That's the incentive. Got you.
All right, here we go. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. I am Ann O'Brien, President of the Arizona School Boards Association. Arizona students deserve access to high-quality schools in their neighborhoods where they live. Not only do they deserve it, but you will hear today that it is what their families want. A serious conversation about helping students begins from the premise that children be provided the tools they need in their own neighborhoods, easily accessible and without additional charges or mandates to sign away one's rights to anti-discrimination policies, which is exactly what is required when a parent takes an ESA. ESAs are merely a band-aid. What we really need, and quite frankly, what our students deserve, is a comprehensive solution to ensure every student has an opportunity to achieve, thrive, and be successful in their own public school, in their own neighborhoods. ASBA has long stood against the expansion of vouchers in the legislature and in the courts, reflecting not only the beliefs and priorities of school board members who represent communities across the state, but also citizens of Arizona who overwhelmingly voted down that voucher expansion in 2018. The people of Arizona have spoken. We're pleased to be hosting this event today with the organization who led that fight, Save Our Schools Arizona. And it is my pleasure to introduce Burdetta Hodge, a governing board member from the Tempe Union High School District. She's also the vice president of the Arizona School Boards Association Black Alliance and a member of the SOS Arizona Board. Burdetta?
Thank you. Members of the press, my fellow colleagues, and each of you. Hello, my name is Burdetta Hodge, and she gave me all the titles, but I'm going to say one more, that I'm also the vice president of Booker T. Washington Child Development Center. Today, I stand here to speak to you about the disgrace of the history of vouchers in America. They were invented after the landmark U.S. Supreme Court case Brown versus the Board of Education, which deemed public schools segregated illegal in America. They have invented to defy that decision by allowing white families in the South to flee to newly integrated public schools and take their children to segregated private schools, taking most of public funding with them. While 99% of us still see it as disgraceful nature of history, the truth is vouchers are still here today and still seem to serve the same purpose of segregating our schools, discriminating against families, and promoting a system of haves and haves not. Study after study in Arizona across America shows whenever vouchers programs exist, the communities, schools are more segregated by race, ethnicity, and income than in any other area. That is why ESL vouchers expansions are so damaging to our kids, and they claim to help the very kids in the same communities they hurt the most. Arizona has more school choice than any other state in the nation, including open enrollment, magnet schools, busing partners, and private schools. And yet, more than 10 years in existence, the number of families choosing public schools, both charter and their home district, is around a overwhelming 95%. Let me say that again, 95%. Time and time again, Arizona voters have stated to value their plain and clear voting message that they vote yes on bonds, yes on overrides, yes on Prop 301 and 208, most recently. And when we vote for our dollars to be invested in public schools, we're not saying that we want to invest in private schools subsidies. We're saying public schools. Having been an advocate for families of color in Arizona for more than 2 decades, I know what it takes to support Black and brown children. I know it takes full funded public schools education in their neighborhoods. Let me say that again, in their neighborhoods. Schools that accept and protect the individual's learning style, their personal beliefs, and their academic needs. Schools that provide busing, nursing, counseling, breakfast, lunch, before and after school care, financial and academic accountability of every classroom and every dollar. Fighting for civil rights means making every public school and every student a winner, not by manipulating with vouchers to create winners and losers. We can do better. We must do better. For our future of our dependents, of our children are depend on it. Thank you so much. My name is Burdetta Hodge. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Devin Del Palacio, and I have the honor of serving as the chairman for the National Black Council of School Board Members. I also have the honor of serving locally here as a president of the Tolleson Union High School District Governing Board. And first, let me be very clear that public education is a civil right. Public education is a civil right. I only wish Rip Boyer and his colleagues treated it as such. I wish they were honest with parents about their intentions to defund public education. Many parents are not aware that when they sign up for a voucher, they're actually giving away some of their federal protections. You see, unlike private schools, public school students' rights do not stop at our school gates. Public schools exist to serve all students, no matter their socioeconomic status, race, religion, gender, orientation, or learning ability. In America, nearly 11 million children are poor. That's 1 in 7. That's 1 in 7 kids who make up almost 1/3 of all people living in poverty in this country. Black, Hispanic, American Indian, Alaska Native children are also disproportionately represented among children living in poverty. For example, while around 14% of our children in the United States are Black, they make up more than 1/4 of children living below the poverty line. During this pandemic, public schools have stepped up to meet the challenges of many students. In the Tolleson Union High School District alone, we've served nearly 1 million meals. 1 million meals since August to our students, their siblings, and of course, their parents. Not only that, we provided laptops, hotspots, access to critical mental health services. So opening the floodgates for funding to leave public schools would without a doubt create a greater hardship for many students and families. To put it lightly, to introduce a voucher program, while many vulnerable communities are struggling with COVID-19, is flat out cruel and wrong. Let us also not forget that an overwhelming majority of parents have already chosen or choose to send their kids to public schools. So if you're pro-choice, then you should honor the choice that parents have already made and invest in public schools. You can't say you're for choice and turn your back on the parents that have already spoken. If you truly care about the state of education here in Arizona, then our politicians will be finding ways to give our schools the resources they need to be successful, as opposed to limiting resources that further exacerbate the many inequities that already exist. At this time, I would like to introduce Tamara Durant, who's a parent from the Kyrene School District.
Masks, right? Yeah. Right. My name is Tamara Durant, and I'm speaking to you today as a parent of 3 children in the Kyrene School District. I was born and raised in Arizona. I grew up in Prescott, where I also grew up in a single-parent, low-income home. Because of this, I qualified for assistance programs growing up. I received free and reduced price lunch, and when I had emergency surgery at 9, Access helped pay the bills. My college education was funded primarily through grants and state-funded scholarships.
These programs allowed me to fully realize the benefits of the public education available to me. Because of Arizona's investment in me, I am now in a position where I can provide my children everything they need. My oldest child is at Centennial Middle School, and my two youngest attend Kalina Elementary in Ahwatukee. Having our kids at Kalina has been such a positive experience, especially over the last year. The teachers there have been flexible, gracious, and the care they have for our children comes through every day. And I'm so glad because it was always my intention to have our children attend the school in our neighborhood. So much of what creates our community starts in our schools. Certainly for me, a lot of my place in the community has come through my children. My best friends are the parents of their friends. We constantly run into my children's PE teacher at Fry's, and my boys bike through the neighborhood with their friends from school. These are the things that tie us together. As being part of my community, I served on the Kalina Site Council for a number of years with our principal, Mrs. Brunner. Mrs. Brunner's been the principal at Kalina for 10 years. She is an amazing educator. She's such a fierce advocate for our students. She's the kind of person that makes your community better. In the Site Council is where Mrs. Brunner explained to us that Kalina had received a Title I assistance designation. She explained that these funds were to go towards the children that needed it most and were based on our number of students that had free and reduced price lunch. As a council, we did an honest assessment of our school, our students, what we were doing well, and where there were gaps. School leadership used this information to make a plan to make sure those funds went to the students that needed it the most. Now, something like 1452 threatens to use that Title I assistance designation against our school. It gives families, even ones like mine, an incentive to pull their children to a private education, taking their funds with them. And it creates a circular situation. Funds are removed from the schools, schools have to do more with less, more families leave. When we undermine our neighborhood schools, we are fraying the bonds that tie us together. It segregates us. When politicians say they're pro-education, but they support programs like this and other ways to pull funds from public education into private ones, what they support is an education system where someone can make a profit off our children. As parents, it is our responsibility to give our children everything they need to grow up and grow and develop. But as members of a community, we have an obligation to every single child that they are given everything they need to grow up and develop and succeed. If we dismantle public education in the name of school choice, what we're really choosing is to leave some kids behind. I think every student should have the access to public education that I had. And I think you'll find they're worth the investment. Thank you. Next up, we have Elena Aguilar.
Good morning. My name is Elena Aguilar. I'm a parent of two students, one in the Osborne School District and one in Phoenix Union High School District, both public school districts. I'm also the governing board president of the Osborne School District. I believe that if we want to ensure strong and accessible education and a future for all, regardless of students' abilities, we need to oppose SB 1452. Using families of color or families living in poverty as a pawn is an excuse to line the pockets of private schools. As a school board member and representative of the Osborne School District community, our responsibility is to be good stewards of our taxpayers' money. We know that private schools have no accountability and lack transparency when it comes to finances and student learning. We serve all students, regardless of where they came from, including English learners in our most vulnerable populations. We are accountable to the community and the students' achievement. It is wrong asking our Latino families to give up the rights of their children's education by taking a voucher to attend private schools, where no accountability is required. Will private schools provide translators for families that don't speak English? As a former English learner, I know that my public education provided me the supports that I needed when I was learning English. Will private schools do that? Will they provide language access to the parents who don't speak English, who don't understand that, their rights as parents or their rights, in this country? Will private schools provide food for students who only eat one meal a day? I know that when I was a child, I received most of my meals in the school system. We need to focus on investing back in our communities and in our public schools. I urge you to oppose SB 1452. Mi nombre es Ilenia Aguilar, soy madre de dos estudiantes de las escuelas públicas, uno de Osborne School District y otro de la escuela preparatoria de Phoenix Union High School. También soy presidenta de la mesa directiva de Osborne School District. Si queremos asegurar que nuestros estudiantes tengan una educación de calidad y accesible para todos los estudiantes, debemos de oponernos a la propuesta de ley SB 1452. Para que todos los estudiantes, independientemente de sus habilidades, tengan acceso a una buena vida, una vida de calidad por medio de su educación pública. Usar a las familias latinas que viven en bajos recursos es una excusa para llenar los bolsillos de las escuelas privadas. Como miembro de la Junta Escolar y representante de la comunidad del Distrito Escolar de Osborne, nuestra responsabilidad es ser buenos administradores del dinero de nuestros contribuyentes. Sabemos que las escuelas privadas no tienen responsabilidad y carecen de transparencia en lo que respecta a las finanzas y el aprendizaje de los estudiantes. Servimos a todos, sin importar sus habilidades. Es incorrecto pedir a nuestras familias que renuncien a los derechos de la educación de sus hijos al tomar un vale para asistir a las escuelas privadas, donde no se requiere responsabilidad ni transparencia. Las escuelas privadas no proporcionan transporte público ni van a proporcionar almuerzos a los estudiantes. Necesitamos enfocarnos en invertir nuevamente en nuestras propias comunidades y en nuestras escuelas públicas. E insisto que se oponga a la propuesta de ley SB 1452. Muchas gracias. Y I have the honor to introduce Dr. Arlene M. Kennedy, Superintendent of School District Number 31.
The National Alliance of Black School Educators, an organization of African American and other minority educators, once wrote in a white paper that educating Black and brown students is a civil right. The white paper gave the rationale that the historic and documented educational underachievement of Black and brown kids This white paper gave the rationale that the historic and documented educational underachievement of African Americans and other minorities is the most glaring inequity and unfilled initiative in the 20th and 21st century for social justice. SB 1452 proposes that education is a civil right for Title I students to have the option of what they consider to be a better education. A chance for students to have a better learning because, of course, it is their civil rights. But those of us who truly understand what civil rights means know that this legislation is a misnomer in itself against what it claims to want to provide. So let us clarify civil rights in education. Number one, let's promote academic excellence. In order to promote academic excellence, public schools must be able to provide adequate resources to ensure highly qualified teachers that lead the classroom, innovative curriculum material that enhances and engages the learning styles of minorities with respect to their cultures, traditions, and values, and accountable measurement instruments that support and evaluate teachers and leaders through the learning challenges students bring to school every day. Based on this criteria, I ask you today, are private schools and other entities held accountable for the measurement to promote academic excellence? What are the accountability measures to ensure the promotion of academic excellence? And where are those requirements in this legislation? Number two, public schools must ensure dropout prevention and post secondary plans. And in order to do that, we do things like zero tolerance policies on dropout prevention and enriching student retention. We host post secondary activities for all students, regardless of their career paths, so that they can have an opportunity to reach their future goals. We provide resources for our special populations who will need adult assistance as they reach their future goals. Based on this criteria, I ask you again today, are private schools and other entities held accountable for this to happen? What are the accountability measures to ensure that this happens? And where are those measures in this legislation? Number three, public schools provide support for families of underachieving Title I students, a part of this legislation. But number one, we do it because we provide parent workshops to assist families in supporting student learning. We provide counseling services for families, most times during the evening, to support the life needs of families. We provide nutritional resources to support families beyond the school day. We generate financial support for students and families in need of basic resources that Abraham Maslow says is in the hierarchy of needs. Based on this criteria, I ask you a third time, are private schools and other entities held accountable to provide the resources I just described? What are the accountability measures to ensure that these things occur? And where are these requirements in this legislation? I venture to bet you will not find these civil rights in education that public school settings provide for students embedded in receiving Title I through Title IX, by the way, services. Legislation oftentimes sticks with buzzwords, Title I being one of those buzzwords, but they never flesh out the significance of the terms that they apply. And this is the case in this legislation. As a public school educator who often discusses how it is important to level the playing field for students of color to have better access to education, I do not think this legislation is that answer. Do not call this a civil right, because this is not a civil act of supporting students or the whole child, and it is not a right. Ron Edmonds in 1970 once said, "We can, whenever and wherever we choose, educate all kids whose education is of interest to us." Let's make education of interest to us. I will now introduce to you Amanda. Amanda is from the Tempe Union High School District. Amanda Steele, a parent and an advocate. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Steele. I am delighted to be here today. I appreciate the opportunity. I am a mother to a son that is currently in his 7th year of high school, getting ready to graduate from what is now Success University that Tempe Union has recently offered. We have seen this expansion strategy before by identifying groups that would supposedly benefit from vouchers. 10 years ago, individuals with disabilities were the pawn that the legislators used. I'm here to give you guys some things to ponder on today, because as a parent of a child with special needs who has gone through the public education system, I had my son very young. as I grew, I kind of grew with him. And what I learned probably way later than I was able to even help him. However, what I learned is that ESA is a wonderful opportunity for a very different population. There are populations that it does work for, and there are populations that it does not. So I'm today going to focus on one population. I have a son with an intellectual disability. I'm going to focus on the intellectual disability population. Currently, we have had 10 years of ESA programs, and our employment rate for individuals with disabilities graduating from high school has still not expanded. Honestly, even in the public education system, we have so much work to do, but we can work on it if we have the funding to do so. I went to Tempe Union High School District 3 years ago and explained this is all the things that are lacking, because as I've grown, I've discovered what could possibly help and benefit the students that come behind my son. So I've created policy teams to work on policy to benefit that. That won't come to light if we dismantle public education. So 3 years ago, I went to Tempe Union High School District, and I told them, this is what you're lacking. You're lacking in curriculum, you're lacking in sexual education, and you're lacking in a transition program. Within 3 years, they have created a transition program that honestly is minimally adequate, but could be so much better if we could fund schools. So if we continue to dismantle and take from schools, you are going to continue to not offer opportunities for programs that are already existing to grow and expand and provide opportunities for our children to become competitively employed and members of society that are part of it. So when you send your child to school, what do you send your child to school to do? I personally sent my child to school to learn, to grow, become capable. About 5 years ago, he started going to employment transition conferences, and during those conferences, he came to me and said he wanted to work. 5 years later, he doesn't have those skills. That is a consistent problem across the board. Arizona has a developmental disability program called vocational rehabilitation that is currently sitting at a 90% failure rate. If we continue to take away the funding, that will continue to just deteriorate. We will never be able to get these individuals that are highly capable of working if given the opportunity, if given the proper funding and potential or supports to allow them to expand those capabilities. Now these voucher programs, proponents are trying to use students of color as another group in need. As you just heard from these speakers, that is not what is best for these families. These communities have spoken, and the fact is that parents want to be served in their own public schools. That's where the legislature needs to put their attention. As a parent that didn't understand and wasn't educated for many, many years, I have a little bit of experience of what it's like to not have a community. So I want to know, if you expand vouchers to Title I schools, who is going to reach out to those community members that don't have community? Those families that depend on the buses to take their children to school, that probably never even have conversations because some of them can't even communicate with the school staff. Who is going to make sure those students have a school if there is no public education left? I'm going to give you a statistic of just the city of Tempe. The city of Tempe has 21 schools in it. 16 of those schools are Title I schools. The average income in Tempe is $54,000. That is double the income of what Arizona considers the poverty level. If those 16 schools have access to all those parents taking their students out of school, you will destroy that district. And every family that wants public education, that wants to see the benefit of it, that knows that there's programs that have potential. I'm a special needs parent. I'm helping to fix the potential for those programs, but we can't do it if it's not there. So you have to give us the opportunity. You have to give us the funds so that we can improve this. Because as a disability advocate, I want to make individuals with disabilities seen, heard, and respected. I want them to be given the opportunities through public education to become employable, to become part of society as contributing members.
If you're looking for individual interviews, you have the list of people, and we have more people here if you'd like to do an interview.